the reason people read is to escape life. And I don't think so. I think the reason that we read is to better navigate and understand life. Because when you're reading this fictional story, you're in that person's headspace, consciousness, and navigating how they think, how they decide to respond, and to internal and external problems. And in doing that, you vicariously are living through an experience that gives you perspective should you come across that in your life. Or it may even just be something that repeats a similar pattern of your life, so you really connect with that character and feel less alone. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I have realized that when you get stuck when you're writing a book, it's often the same reason that you can get stuck in life. It's that you have a misbelief or a cognitive distortion that is getting in the way of your desire. And a story is basically a hero or a protagonist who has a desire, and something is thwarting that desire, and we may refer to the external plot points of what's stopping that desire. But the most enduring stories are going to have that internal conflict. Like, you want something, but you have some kind of misbelief or self-sabotaging behavior that's getting in the way. And when we look at stories, we may only point to the external, like, oh, this person wants to get out of this swamp, but there's a dragon in it. But those action-based kind of plot lines are not as powerful as that internal, like, if this character has a belief that they cannot trust anyone, or if they have a belief that that they can't trust themselves, that every decision made in that story is taken out of that internal belief. And yes, there's an external action, like if you don't believe that the world is a safe place and that people can be trusted, it may manifest with you being in a swamp and the dragon is the problem. But the real problem in a story that really will resonate is that the character is in their own way. The protagonist is in their own way. And so I've been thinking about this a lot because it's so much easier for another person to see what your misbelief is than you yourself. Like, sometimes you can see it to a point, but you almost have to ask another person, hey, what is it that is my misbelief, cognitive distortion? And the reason I say this is I was trying to figure out the kind of constant desire and misbelief in the novel I'm working on. And I asked my friend, and she immediately knew. She said, your character is always thinking that other people have the right perspective and is not trusting her own perspective and not honoring her own needs, boundaries, and perspective and point of view. And it was really striking when she said that, because that is while she was talking about the arc of my character in a book that I've been working on, it's also the exact same life misbelief I have. It's the kind of limited belief you talk about when you're trying to get through, why do I keep getting in this same pattern? And so what was interesting about it was that my desire to connect with friends, with relationships, is thwarted by my misbelief that I have to abandon myself and go along with their frame, their point of view, their perspective, or I won't get love, right? And I had this with friends. I had this with dating. And what's interesting about it is, see, I have known that was like a little, like a tiny part. Like I always think, oh, I'm pandering, I'm people pleasing, I'm catering to their reality. But hearing her say that so immediately as the obvious problem that the character had, really, it really helped me realize self-trust is my misbelief. And once you have the revelation of your misbelief, whether it's in the therapy session or whether you're writing something that makes you confront parts of yourself, it's really freeing because it gets you out of a self-doubt. And since, like, if I have a problem with self-trust, then I tend to even doubt, well, what is my theme, or what is real? What is really going on in this dynamic with someone? And so it was really powerful for me because I realized that the simple aspect of plotting a book and having the character confront their misbelief is, in every scene when you're revising, you look for what can completely escalate the stakes of that character confronting their misbelief until it's completely unavoidable and they have to finally realize that they've got this distortion. And it's sometimes not, like, it's even hard for me to view mine as a distortion, because when you don't betray yourself to keep connection, you will lose people. I've lost friends this year, as the older videos may indicate, for just my decision of what I want to inject. And I've lost friends not because of that. It's really more so that what they're making it mean. So they have their own distortion and misbelief in what that represents and what that means. And see, that's how we all live our life. Our perception of what something means is the reality that we subscribe to. So if you believe that someone is evil or dumb for not injecting themselves with something, then you subscribe to that, and then they are immediately in that box and they're evil and dumb. And the same goes with me. If I have a belief that, what I think, what my gut says, what my feelings are, they're not valid, they're usually wrong, so I've got to outsource it to somebody else's point of view. Well, that misbelief gets me in a constant pattern of being attracted to people, whether friends or men in dating situations, who have that frame and that confidence so that they're almost over domineering, and then I go along with it, but then I'm resentful because there's no room for my needs and my fears and my emotions. It's just me having to enter their point of view, their movie. And the reason it's relevant when you're working and revising a novel is, if you don't know it, which we often don't, there's no consciousness to making a plot that's going to feel especially resonant. And likewise, if you don't know your misbelief in life, your limited belief, your misbelief, then you're going to keep getting in the same emotional problems because you just haven't realized, oh, I'm operating from a conditioned response that's continually getting me into situations until I learn. And that's why we read. We read or we watch movies to experience that character navigating life. We might be able to see their misbelief more clearly than them, but it gives us our perspective on our own, distortions, delusions, and frees us. And so, like I said at the beginning, it's not an escape to be in a character's experience. It is actually, you are getting so much out of confronting someone else, their story, them making a decision, them having a reaction, and then what unfolds from there. Because stories are just that cause and effect until you finally get up to the climax where you've gotten to the pivotal point where this character has been operating under this misbelief, and now there's no way they can continue without seeing this is what is wrong and this is what keeps getting me in these situations. And that it takes a certain kind of humility and self-awareness to confront that, because most of the people I know who are readers of fiction, not nonfiction, they have developed that ability to step into someone else's shoes and empathize because they're readers. They crave living vicariously through these experiences in order to then navigate life better. And so when people act like, oh, you got to experience this rather than read, well, reading is a safe way to experience a lot of different points of view, of different experiences, and you don't have to actually, be in that. And that really amplifies your perspective, because you carry with you those characters' voices and their decisions, and whether it's comedy, tragedy, those can inform your life immeasurably. And they can also, of course, add their own distortions. For instance, I have a distortion of sometimes thinking that the depiction of something in a TV show is more reality than my own experience, which brings me back. That's my misbelief, is thinking that another person's perspective, including a TV show's perspective, is more valid than my own, and it's not. Anyway, if you find yourself getting stuck in revising a story, a script, a novel, I highly recommend you just get to this question of, what does my main character desire? And what is the misbelief that is getting in their way? And it can be as cliche and universal as the idea that somebody wants love, but their misbelief is that if you have love, there's a loss, there's a sense of loss and a loss of freedom. And so that they're doing their unconscious belief that love means loss of freedom, and a loss in general, like a grief, is keeping them from completely committing to somebody that can honor their needs and is curious about them and can actually commit in a legitimate, actually caring way. And so those kinds of truths, even though they're broad and universal, they get to the crux of, oh, my misbelief is what's in my way. And that's more power than just being at the whim of the world and being, oh no, the external events are just happening to me. Because that's the thing. That's why those stories, when people are just at the whim of a crazy, chaotic world, those stories are not as enduring. They're just not the classics, because we often use the term fatal flaw. That's the character that has this flaw, and that's what gets in their way. Well, that's similar to that's exactly what misbelief is. So whether you're in life or when you're in a story, if you are just looking at, oh, I'm a victim of the world, everyone's out to get me, and you're blame shifting, well, you're never going to have the epiphany that the character needs in the climax, or that you need in order to navigate life. Because you have to have that moment when you see that a belief you hold, whether conditioned, whether it's something that you just maybe through osmosis absorbed from your parents because they have that belief, because maybe they act as though, oh, we always have to outsource our opinion. There's an authority that knows, and I don't trust my own self. Maybe they carry that on, and so you parallel it. So anyway, it's a crucial thing to editing your novel, your script, to realize what is that kind of interior self-sabotage, internal belief that is in the protagonist's way from what they state they want. And maybe it's as simple as what they're consciously stating they want versus what their subconscious states they want. It's that aspect of one part of you wants love, the other part of you wants freedom, one part of you wants to connect, but the other thinks that connection requires self-abandonment. And these are at odds. And until you get that awareness, you will keep coming across the same pattern, whether you're a character in a tragedy or a person in a real life tragedy. Anyway, I hope this was helpful with writing and with life. It's a huge revelation for me, and it's helped me a lot.